Alright guys, thanks for clicking on the video today. We're going to be working on a little cosmetic and slight functionality bit, but we're going to be practicing working with carbon fiber. I wanted to do a little bit of a interior project just to get the hang of it before I start tackling some bigger projects with carbon fiber. So let me show you what we're working on today. So the piece we're working on today is the shifter bezel, which is right here. It's not in the car right now. Usually there's an ashtray up in here, but I removed it because I'm going to put a switch panel in right here. Once the switch panel is installed, I'm going to be skinning it in carbon fiber, and basically that's just gluing a layer of carbon fiber on here. It's adding weight, not very much at all, hardly anything, but it's all for cosmetics, because this thing weighs like nothing, so there's no point in like having to figure out how to mount it back into the center console when I could just skin it and it adds like no weight to it and it looks better. So I'm just gonna skin it and then leave the mounting points alone, and it'll mount up perfectly just like OEM. And then we're gonna have a switch panel in here and it's gonna look all nice. Now for the switch panel, I already got started on this a little bit. I had to do a lot of measurements and checking and making sure everything fit all right, but I got this piece of aluminum. It's just like brushed aluminum. And I'm probably gonna leave it this brushed aluminum color. I might clean it up a bit, but I got room for 4 switches right here, toggle switches, and then I'm gonna have 1 button right here. So I have the toggle switches. They're just gonna mount up like that, and then this is my push button. It's a momentary button, and it has a red halo, and that's gonna go right in there. So, and I got it sized up to where it's gonna fit in this hole, and I need to figure out how to mount it. But first, I gotta get this cut out and then get these holes drilled to the correct size so that these switches can bolt into its position, and then we can figure out how we're gonna mount it into the shifter bezel. Alright, got the holes center punched. Now it's time to pilot hole and drill them. Alright, switch fits. Look at that. Nice and neat. Now it's just time to drill the holes for these guys. Alright, holes are drilled, look pretty straight to me. Alright, so hopefully you can tell, but I got all this scuffed up, so it's ready for the epoxy to bind to it. I also put some glazing putty on this guy to make it so that it's like seamless, I guess. I was a little worried about it showing up, possibly. I used 120 grit sandpaper to scuff this up, and I taped off my aluminum part that I don't want to get epoxied or anything on it. So this is ready to start putting the carbon fiber on it, and I got a couple of things I can show. So this is a roll of carbon fiber. It's a 50-inch by 5-yard roll. This is for, I'm doing a lot of stuff in carbon fiber, so I got a lot of carbon fiber. This is only gonna use a little bit, so if you want to do something similar to this, you don't need that much. You can just get just a little bit. And then I also got some West Systems epoxy. So I'm using 105 resin and 207 hardener. This is the special clear hardener. So this is what everybody uses for carbon fiber because it comes out perfectly clear. And then when you're, this is carbon fiber skinning. So when you're skinning a part, you want to, I guess, dye the resin a certain color. So I have some black pigment. You just add this, a couple drops of the resin, it turns it black so you can't see whatever the background color is of behind it. Alright, so here's the carbon fiber. This is 2x2 twill, and it's just fabric. very thin, you can see through it, and yeah, it weighs like nothing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to lay this up on here and kind of get an idea of how big of a piece I need. And then I'm going to use this tape to create a border, and then I'm gonna cut on that tape, and that's gonna keep these edges from fraying. You see that's how they do it from the manufacturer. So we're gonna do that, and then yeah, I'm gonna leave a little bit of excess just because I don't want it to get too tight. And then also you want to be very delicate with this, because if you are a little too aggressive, it can cause the fibers to come out of alignment. You don't want that. So you want to be delicate with it if you want it to look good, you know. Alright, and just like that, we got our piece cut out, and none of this is frayed. You also want to get some good, these aren't regular scissors, these are sewing scissors, they're Fiskars. And they're really good for cutting fabric. So that's that. I'm going to roll this back up so it doesn't get any damage or nothing. And then we're going to continue on with this. Okay, so I am going to try and do the layup in this room here. I don't know if this is considered a well-ventilated area, but I got the ceiling fan on, as well as a fan facing out the window. So hopefully that'll help pull some of the fumes out. This is going to be one way to find out if it's going to be proper ventilation. Kind of feel like it's not, but I want to try, because I like doing stuff in this room because it's a nice, clean, controlled workspace to do stuff in. So there's an actual calculation of how much resin you're supposed to use for a certain amount of carbon fiber. For this one, I pretty much need pretty much nothing. So I'm just gonna mix up a little bit, just enough to coat the surface and let it tack up so that I can lay the fibers on it. And that's gonna be my first coat. And the second coat is just gonna be to lay it up, and I'll probably do like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 of those. So yeah, I'm gonna do that first coat with the black pigment to lay the base. We're gonna let it tack up, and then we'll lay the fiber on it. All right, this might be enough ventilation because I'm not getting high right now. So all right, and you can see got a nice black color, and now we're just gonna paint it on here. And hopefully it doesn't drip on the table, but it probably will. Oh well. I'm just gonna do a nice even coat. And this has a pretty long pot life, so you don't really have to rush with this stuff because it's made for resin infusion, so it's a long process, so you don't have to rush with it because it's not going to dry up on you like a 5-minute epoxy would. This stuff lays real nice. Like even the brush strokes are kind of going away with how it's laying up. I'll give you a closer look once I finish doing this, but so far it's looking very good. And we're only using the black on the base coat. You don't want to use the black when you're doing the actual layup of the resin or of the fibers, because then it'll hide the texture of the carbon fiber and the pattern and stuff like that. And you don't really want that, so that's why we're doing this. Okay, so it's been sitting for a little while, but you can see how nicely it's laying out. It's really smooth. So that's going to be real nice when it tacks up. We can put the fibers on it. Alright, so it's been 2 hours, and it seems to be at the correct tackiness. What you want it to be is so that if you just touch it quickly, that no resin comes off on your finger. And that's the right amount of tack that you want. So now I'm going to gently lay this on here and try not to distort the weave. I'm going to do my best. All right, so I think this should work. I got it laid down. I probably should have waited a little bit because I don't know, it might be hard to see. But when I was pressing down on it, some of the black epoxy came through, and you're probably going to see that in the finished product. But this is all part of the learning process. I'm glad I figured that out before I did it on something more critical. But other than that, I think I did a pretty good job. It seems to be sticking everywhere. I taped this down just to kind of make sure it's tight across the radius, because there's another panel that goes right up against this. And then I tried to press it in the recess. You can kind of see the recess there. I'm not worried about the recess here, but we got the recess pressed in there. And then, so this is supposed to dry for another 3 hours. I'm going to let it dry overnight because it's 9 o'clock. So I'll come back in the morning and I will put the first layer of resin on there. And then I have to let that dry for 8 hours, wet sand it, and then more layers after that. The first layup is done. I put it on a little thick, but I just wanted it to get to soak through the carbon. And yeah, I'm just learning. So but this is basically, once this is dry, I'm gonna come through and trim up, do a little bit more trimming, sanding, denibbing is what they call it. So it's been long enough for the first layer of resin to cure, and it's looking pretty good so far. I came through and I trimmed up the edges a little bit better. I'm gonna go in here and trim out the excess in these parts as well, and then I'm going to use some 120 grit to get these edges lined up perfectly, and then I'm gonna score the surface with 120 grit so that the new resin I put on sticks. Just kind of knock off some of the high spots, and then we're gonna apply another coat of resin. It's all cleaned up. I found out that using a razor blade worked really good for cutting close to these edges, so I went through and cleaned it up a bit more just with the razor blade. Now it's time for sanding. I got it all trimmed and sanded, and I keyed the surface so the next layer of epoxy sticks. And you don't want to sand this to where you can't see glossy spots, because then you'll burn through the epoxy and damage the carbon fiber underneath. So you just kind of want to just scuff it and get all the high spots off, and that will work. So I'm going to mix up some epoxy and I'm going to put the next layer on. Alright, so get you a close up. It's focusing on what's in the back. But other layer is on. Now we just need to let it tack up. So give it like 2 hours, come back, throw another coat on there, and then we'll let it dry overnight. Oh my god, it is looking really good. So I'm gonna let this dry for like 24 hours probably, or maybe a little less than 24 hours. It'll be full cured about 12 hours, so let it dry that extra time, and then when I come back I'm going to wet sand it with a fine grit, because you can see there's still some, I don't know if we'll pick up on camera, but you can see there's some high spots and slight imperfections still that need to be knocked down, and you can kind of see the waviness in it. So I want to wet sand it flat, because you want to build up that resin so that you're not going to sand it into the weave. Alright, so I need to clean this still before I put the next coat on, but you can see I got most of the high spots down. There's still some little low spots you can see, but you can't even really feel them, and I don't want to sand too far down because I don't want to hit the carbon fiber. And if you look up here, you can see that this spot was a little bit more uneven, and I think that's because when I was having the resin dry, it was the gravity was pulling it down here, so all this stuff was perfectly coated, but this got a little thin. So I think the next coat of resin I put on there, I'm gonna kind of prop it up like this so that this gets coated good, and then this will be a little thinner. But so by the way it looks now, we're probably gonna have to do more sanding and then a polish at the end, because I can still see, very slight, but you can see little, I don't know if it's debris or what, but I mean, I'm doing the best to keep everything clean. It might be from the brushes, I don't know, but there's like little bit like speckles of something. So once it cures again, I'm probably gonna take some like 1200 grit sandpaper and kind of just, I guess, denib the surface, take off all those little debris that's on the top so it's smooth, and then hit it with some compound, polish it, and I might put a little bit of wax on it just because, for a little bit of protection. Alright, so here's what it looks like after the third light coat after the wet sand. And it's not bad, there's just a couple of blemishes. So I got some 1200 grit sandpaper and 2000 grit sandpaper, and then I have some compound. But I'm going to wet sand it with the 1200. Well, I'm going to try the 2000 first and see if that takes out these blemishes. If it doesn't, then I'll use the 1200, but I think it will. And then we'll get this smoothed out, and then we can do the polish, and hopefully it'll look good. So here's what it looks like after the sanding. This is all 2000 grit, so it's a little hazy, but there's no more of those imperfections anymore. So it's just a uniformly smooth surface. Up here, the coat is still a little thin, so you can see some light spots. I don't want to sand any further because it looks like I'm starting to get into the actual fibers. So we're just going to polish it up. I don't even think you'll be able to notice. You could feel the weave a little bit, but nothing crazy. And in all reality, I think some of these little imperfections like this is just kind of what you get with carbon fiber, and it makes it so that it's, you know, different and it's handmade. So I'm not too worried about it. So now I'm going to get the compound and polish this up. Alright, so I cut and buff it and it looks a little better. There's still some like scratches from the 2000 grit, but it's really hard to see. It's overall glossy, and it may just be my detailer's eye seeing all these little scratches from the 2000 grit. So if you're gonna do this, and I might do this later, but if you're gonna do this, probably end off with 3000 grit or get a more aggressive compound to start buffing it with. So that it takes out those scratches, but I'm gonna have to figure something out for that. But as of right now, I think that looks good, and it's probably just gonna get scratched inside the car, but it's shiny. It's uniform. So I'm gonna go ahead and install this and put the switches back in here. All right, so we got the shift boot, e-brake boot, and the switch panel done. Everything came out really nice. Switches work real good. The paint match came out nice. I got this button right here. None of this is wired up to anything yet, but in a future video I'll start doing that stuff. Some of these switches are going to be related to boost control and launch control, if you can figure that out. And then I have 2 extras just for whatever I decide to do with those. And in a future video I'm going to make a relay box to sit behind this, and then route the wires for all the switches and stuff like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like down below. If you have any questions, put them in the comments down below. If you know somebody who might like this video, please share it with them. If you aren't subscribed, please consider subscribing. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.